Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Official test start time 2 minutes. Um, Top of the morning. Today's gonna be an excellent day. Shout out to all my friends and family, and my fans, and my business partners, my colleagues, my peers, my clients, my investments, my portfolios, my management team, my siblings, my loved ones, my children, my babies, my grandbabies. Welcome for today. I'm just getting myself situated here. Actually, you know what? I don't actually do that. So I have Rembrandt's Enterprise here, the studio of the market, Sebralna Altos. Right? Excellent read. Enjoying every bit of it. I have my engineering notebook there. I mean, power up all of my systems so that I can conquer the universe. Before we get started, let me make sure that I secure the network. Um, that's the most important thing. One quick second. So while I do that, why don't we get a quick prayer in? What do you guys think? Thank you, Heavenly Father, for all of the blessings in our lives. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for all the blessings in our lives. We worry not about what we don't have, because we're in the process of getting it. And in this journey, everything we do is in your name. Amen. So now that I did that part, mm, so this is today's motivational affirmation. It says today's going to be an excellent day. Success, hustle, execution, discipline, ambition, sacrifice, patience, failure, and focus. That is excellent. That's good. Hmm, let me see what else. Turn on my engineering pens. If I get inspired, I can just jot down any ideas, right? Get everything down, back down. I've been drawing with this one as of lately. Why don't we check the markets as we start our day? So please go YouTube, please go Bloomberg, please go channel, please go to videos, and let us start with, oh, wait a minute, no Asia trade? Oh no, Asia trade. There we go.
The United States is the largest and the most profitable market in the world.
This is Asia Trade. I'm Chevryan in Tokyo. I'm April Hong in Singapore. Your top stories this hour. Apple shares gaining after the bell as holiday season revenue beats expectations, driven by strong iPhone demand, services growth, and a rebound in China. A cautious open ahead for Asia after dip buyers step in on Wall Street. Microsoft tumbling on record AI spending and slowing cloud growth. Gold falling the most since October. Also ahead, Bloomberg reveals U.S. investigations into allegations Meta staff can see WhatsApp messages despite the company's claims of end-to-end encryption. And we speak to the chairman of Japanese memory chip maker Kioxia about the AI boom and their 1,000% stock surge. We'll be watching Apple suppliers across Asia today on those blockbuster results, not to mention Tesla suppliers on that Bloomberg report that we could potentially see these conversations around the merger in that company. But take a look at the Nikkei futures at the moment, not doing much after 3 sessions of gains already. The Japanese yen also holding at that 153 level against the US dollar. But it's really all about the data here in Japan as we head towards the election. We do have Tokyo CPI industrial production jobless numbers out of Japan today. Already we are getting industrial production out of South Korea, beating to the upside, falling only 0.3% year on year. And when it comes to the month-on-month numbers, is actually a gain of 1.7%. And perhaps not surprising because we continue to have that story around the AI demand and the build out in infrastructure, which is of course boosting those companies in South Korea like Samsung Electronics, SK Hynix. We saw those blockbuster results in the trading session yesterday as well. But keep an eye on the ASX 200. The Saturn opened right there, and you can see a little bit of upside because we are continuing to watch the miners. The Aussie dollar already around the 3-year highs, 9 sessions of gains. This is the longest winning streak in about a decade, since 2015. And of course, we have a lot of gyrations around the commodity space, especially in oil with geopolitical tensions around Iran, April. Yeah, we are also watching other commodities, including gold, even though we saw a bit of that pullback. But really, it's about the tech names, right? You talk about how we're seeing strong chip demand, and you take a look at how overall on Wall Street it was the move away from big tech. Given what Microsoft showed us, those concerns about the record spending, and against the backdrop of all this, Apple provided some solace for these tech software investors. If you look at its quarter, it was really good in terms of sales. It crushed estimates. iPhone sales beating, Greater China beating, iPhone revenue overall was a record quarter. But those concerns about memory, that's also something that Apple highlighted. And then we have Tesla on watch as well, because SpaceX is said to be considering a potential merger either with XAI or Tesla. So tech is something that we're watching in the session, but we are also keeping tabs on developments out of DC, because the White House and Senate Democrats are said to have reached a deal to separate the fight over ICE funding from the threat of a broader government shutdown. This is according to sources telling Axios. So maybe we can still avoid this partial government shutdown among the concerns for investors. Let's get more on the Apple earnings, though. Bring in Bloomberg Tech banker Ed Ludlow. So Ed, this was a good quarter for Apple. Talk us through how seasonal this all is.
Yes, seasonal is one way of putting it, but the outperformance is on iPhone and Greater China, and you can take both of those in aggregate, right? Like when the red headline hit on iPhone revenues, it's $4 billion beyond what consensus was, or 9% beyond consensus. But if you jump into the Bloomberg terminal, like straight away go to MODL, even the most bullish estimates on iPhone sales were at $81 billion, something like that, and it came in above 85. And the reason that's important is that this was about timing. The iPhone 17 generation going on sale, through the holiday quarter, and then the read-through to how well it did in Greater China. And that, as Bloomberg writes, it's done a lot to kind of get investors to forget about the concerns they had on AI.
Exactly, because really the conversation around tech companies right now is AI build-out, AI spending. So how's Apple doing there?
They don't have anything to say until the thing is here and it's ready. This is a difficult environment for iPhone anyway, right? There was a lot of talk on the call about rising memory prices. Apple's very good at supply chain, does a lot of ordering ahead of time. Logic chips also are a difficult situation. But there's no moment where Tim Cook and the other executives come out and go, oh, by the way, this is what our new AI-powered Siri can do, and this is when it comes out. That's not how they do things. Right now, the stock's up 8%. It has been much higher in the after hours, and maybe some of that limitation wasn't so much the disappointment on AI, because the street knows it won't get anything on that. It was probably more about the caution that Apple is going to have to manage the supply chain situation that every electronics company is facing right now.
Let us continue.
And you've been really busy as well with this scoop on the terminal about Elon Musk's SpaceX considering a merger either with Tesla or XAI. What do we know about this and what the thinking might be behind this?
Yeah, so two distinct options. Sources tell us that SpaceX and Tesla have considered some sort of merger between those two. And you see Tesla push higher in the after hours after we broke that story. They've also looked at a merger or combination between SpaceX and XAI. My understanding is that there is a group of investors that are pushing very much on the Tesla idea, but nothing is final. As we all know, the background context is that SpaceX is making preparations for an IPO some point in the middle of this year. So that's what's being looked at. And, we don't know the full extent of the mechanisms, the structures that are being proposed. What we do know is that, based on what we're told by sources, there will be some financing considerations for both potential combinations, which are distinct. And that there will be an eye on how sovereign wealth funds, particularly those in the Gulf, can help facilitate this.
That's going to be a nice payout right there.
Because really, the build-out of artificial intelligence investments that Elon Musk is thinking in terms of all of his companies into artificial intelligence is huge, isn't it? What did we hear this week? $20 billion or so?
Yes, so Tesla's capital expenditure commitment for 2026 is $20 billion. It excludes some of the long-term projects that Musk outlined on its own fab, which you can read my reporting on, and around solar. But there has always been a historic linkage between the different Elon Musk companies. There are engineers that have worked on both Tesla projects and SpaceX projects, particularly on materials. There is a world where, the motivation for SpaceX to IPO is for space-based data center. Those designs, though, we haven't seen them, will need solar arrays. Tesla is moving deeper into solar. XAI is a customer of Tesla. And now, as of last night, we know Tesla is an investor in XAI. It bought $2 billion of preferred equity. So we're trying to unpick this, but the story we broke is that both have been looked at. A potential SpaceX and Tesla combination, and, as Reuters reported before us, a SpaceX and XAI combination of some sort.
Reuters, I always pronounce it loudly.
Mortgage lender used Agentforce, the powerful AI from Salesforce. A digital agent would have helped me pre-qualify.
Bloomberg Tech co-anchor Ed Ludlow there with the latest on his scoop when it comes to Tesla, not to mention, of course, the Apple results. We're getting breaking news at the moment on the Bloomberg. The U.S. is now threatening tariffs on countries that provide oil to Cuba. This coming from an executive order that President Trump has signed, declaring a national emergency and establishing a process to impose tariffs on goods from countries that sell or otherwise provide oil to Cuba, protecting U.S. national security, according to the president, and foreign policy as well from the Cuban regime's actions and policies. So we continue to see more involvement of the Trump administration in Latin America. And this, of course, as we continue to hear all of the latest developments around Venezuela, Maduro and Venezuelan oil as well. So we will continue to bring you the latest developments. But right now, we will be watching oil prices as well, because geopolitical tensions around Iran have also spiked the price of oil already, which is now trading at around July highs for Brent crude. So continue to watch this space as President Trump is now talking to the public after signing that executive order on Cuba. But really, it's been tech earnings as well that's moved markets immensely this past week, right? We have the first of those big AI spenders, and that will really position the winners and losers in this AI race, and also perhaps in the stock market rally or sell-off. Let's get to Bloomberg and Life Strategies, Brendan Fagan, for more on this. And Brendan, really a lot for markets to digest today, including not only the latest results from all of these tech giants, but as I mentioned, more tariff threats.
That's right. On one hand, when you look at stocks, you're worried about concentration risk. Just looking at Microsoft, it accounted for about 40 points in the S&P decline today. So you're worried about that.
Wow.
But on the other hand, it's a pretty healthy market dynamic. When companies that perform, they get rewarded, and those that don't perform, they get punished. And so you're happy on that front. But what Microsoft did was a little bit concerning. But Apple's offsetting that, Meta's offsetting that, and then there's also the geopolitical tensions. You're seeing WTI crude settling above 65, Brent above 70. So the market is holding in there, expecting seemingly something to happen in the Middle East, whether it could be chatter of a blockade of oil coming out of Iran as retaliation or pressure, diplomatic pressure. But oil is definitely telling you something and certainly not backing off.
Gold is also telling us something in the way it's climbing along with these geopolitical risks. But we actually saw a pullback in the past 24 hours slightly. Is it behaving, like a haven? It seems to trend along with risk now.
I would certainly say it's behaving more like a risk asset. Obviously, it has its haven characteristics and tendencies, but when something's up 20, 30% in a month, looking at gold, looking at silver, it's certainly trading like a risk asset with extreme beta. So today's pullback was alarming, although it was bought back pretty well, ultimately changing little on the day and finishing with little change on the day. So the price action certainly been interesting, but you saw dip buyer step in pretty aggressively today, which is if you're bullish on the metals, you're happy to see that.
Brendan, this will be a difficult question, but what do you expect to be the next big catalyst for markets?
I think the big thing you have to watch for is coming out of this big tech, whether it can take back over. You've seen an outperformance of the small caps, particularly value and small cap value, and that's sort of why the indexes haven't really gone anywhere. Yes, we're near highs, but we haven't made much progress on the S&P 500 beyond 7,000. So if we can put these hiccups to bed, looking at Microsoft with the Mag 7, given the concentration risks I talked about, then we can start to make some progress towards 7,100 and beyond. But that's really what to look for if leadership can come back in.
Brendan, thanks so much. Our Bloomberg and Life strategist, Brendan Fagan. Now, coming up on the Asia Trade, Kioxia gives us their outlook for flash memory demand and the AI boom, and we talk investment strategy with Pepperstone. Plus, Goldman Sachs tells us why the current gold price is an uncertain entry point for investors. Much more ahead. This is Bloomberg.
S&P 500 futures 6,968, 7.45.
Now to the latest on U.S. politics, and we have this social media post from the president talking about how growth numbers in the U.S. has been really good, but what could really slow things down would be if they get another damaging government shutdown. And to that end, he has indicated that both Republicans and Democrats will fund most of the government until September. So this could be a signal for a deal. Of course, previously we heard how actors have been reporting about this deal to separate the fight over funding for ICE with a version for a broader government shutdown. Let's bring in our managing editor for U.S. Economy and Government, Mario Parker. So, Mario, what do we know about this deal?
Yeah, right now we're still trying to get details on it, but the president essentially posted on Truth Social what we'd largely been chasing for most of the day, but also what had been telegraphed by both Republicans and Democrats alike, which is to find some type of common ground around DHS funding, Department of Homeland Security funding, in order to avert a government shutdown. Democrats, as you know, have called on reforms for the Department of Homeland Security's ICE, in particular after the shooting of 2 Americans in the past month in Minneapolis. We've seen Tom.
Of course, will gold obviously.
Commodities and energy at premium when it comes to
with lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers in Minneapolis in particular, kind of moved to the side. Cooler heads, I mean, it's still early yet, but cooler heads, there is evidence that cooler heads are starting to prevail there.
Bloomberg Managing Editor for U.S. Economy and Government, Mario Parker, there with the latest coming from the U.S. and President Trump. As we've also seen President Trump really sign that executive order when it comes to tariffs on countries that provide oil to Cuba. So take a look at some of those commodities that we're following already. Oil had rallied, with WTI at the moment trading at the highest level since September, and this, of course, around the geopolitical tensions on Iran. The premium when it comes to geopolitics for oil prices has potentially been up to $3 to $4 a barrel, according to Citigroup. And this, as we continue to watch other commodities as well, geopolitical tensions have sent precious metals to a new record highs, also wild gyrations in the copper market. But let's discuss all of this, and joining us for more is the Asia Commodities and Energy Editor, Robin Paxton. Robin, why don't we start with some of those geopolitical hedges? Because we have so much uncertainty out there. We have seen precious metals just rally.
Of course, well, gold obviously traditionally is a hedge against risk in markets, and we've seen no shortage of risk in the first part of the year. You mentioned Iran, which is still ongoing, but we've had intervention in Venezuela by the US administration, as well as the threats to annex Greenland, which have all been powerful drivers in attracting investors to the safe haven that is gold. But that's not the only thing that's affecting gold markets. Can you
totally fine. Let's just talk amongst us.
And the debasement trade obviously has been going for a long time. That's picked up pace with investors moving away from sovereign bonds and currencies in favor of precious metals.
Can we say then that we saw a little bit of a pop in the dollar? Is that why we saw a little bit of downside when it comes to some of these metal prices as well?
It certainly helped, but I think probably a bigger factor is the fact that the precious metals markets now, they attract so many different investors that might not normally be associated with metals. So we've seen speculators, retail traders all pile into the market, and gold, a lot of these investors have sold in order to cover losses elsewhere in equities markets. Normally that wouldn't happen on a risk-off day, but these are not normal times.
And not normal times also for the copper space, especially with that frenzy that happened over in China. What's going on there?
Well, of course, Chinese buyers drove, I think it was the biggest rise in about 16 years in copper prices yesterday, intraday rise. There is genuine fundamentals behind what's happening in copper, with a shortage of supply at some major mines around the world, and also huge demand from the energy transition and electric vehicles and AI data centers. But there's also a lot of speculative interest, particularly coming from China, which has helped drive the prices up. But again, we saw that reset briefly later yesterday.
Robin Paxton, thank you so much for that context around this gyration that we're seeing in the metal space. Asia Commodities and Energy Editor with us here in Tokyo. We do have more ahead on the Asia trade. It's this Bloomberg. Some top global headlines we're following. President Trump says he successfully appealed to Russia's Vladimir Putin to halt strikes on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities for a week. The move comes as Ukraine faces severe cold and power shortages due to damaged infrastructure from recent Russian attacks. President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the remarks, while Trump's envoy says talks to end the war are making progress. China says an anti-corruption purge within its military will not affect plans to eventually bring Taiwan under its control. A defense ministry spokesperson says while China prefers peaceful reunification, it will never rule out the use of force. China's armed forces are facing one of the most sweeping shakeups of the Xi Jinping era, with senior generals vanishing from public view or being formally purged. Canada and South Korea have signed a non-binding agreement to deepen industrial cooperation, including potentially bringing Korean automaking to Canada. The deal also aims to expand ties in critical minerals and clean energy. The Canadian auto sector has been jolted by the U.S. trade war, and the Carney government is preparing a new strategy to be released in the coming weeks. Sherry? Crypto assets pretty steady, April, as we have seen now Bitcoin trading below that $85,000 level for the first time in 2 months. We're seeing a little bit of upside in the Asian session, but really not much especially when you consider that we're down about 30% from an all-time high reached back in October. In fact, that downturn has just continued despite the fact that we're seeing other assets like stocks, gold, silver that we talked about really rallying. And now we're seeing more than $1 billion in leveraged positions being wiped out. And all to do with really the liquidation that we saw in the October period, and how the fragility in the crypto space has not necessarily recovered. And we're also hearing from the likes of Miller Tabak saying that perhaps also the volatility that we're seeing in other parts of the market, for example, the unwinding of popular strategies such as the yen carry trade, for example, in traditional markets, is really not helping this space, Eva. Yeah, you talk about this betting, right? What we've also been seeing in terms of a gamble is these big tech names in the US just bidding the house on the AI game. And certainly you've been seeing that coming through record spending on AI, certainly from the likes of Microsoft just a day ago. And this is despite it slowing in its cloud revenue. So it continues to raise questions about the payoff and to what extent all this further regarding AI is actually causing a bit of distractions in other parts of their businesses. So what you're seeing in the tech trade certainly is when it comes to big tech, we're separating now how hardware has certainly been leading tech versus what we're seeing in software. Despite Apple also beating based on revenue,
good morning,
and it was
good morning.
quite a good quarter based on those iPhone sales, Greater China sales as well. You still see the stock looking pretty flat. So I guess this is just reinforcing the idea of how, in terms of tech stocks, software could kind of be in the backseat while these chip makers take the lead. And we're talking, of course, about the memory chip makers, the likes of SanDisk as well, that have been doing well. More ahead on the Asia trade. This is Bloomberg.
Now a local tax expert will do your taxes for $150 all in. No catch. No matter your situation. Whether you're filing W-2s or self-employed forms, your taxes are here. The happiest refund is guaranteed. So get taxes off your plate and get back to the good stuff. Pay only $150 to get your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert.
We have breaking news out of Japan. We are getting the Tokyo CPI numbers, inflation excluding fresh food, year-on-year growth of 2%, which is missing to the downside from economists' expectations, also decelerating for the month of January. Exclude energy as well, and its growth of only 2.4%. The headline number coming in at 1.5%, which is again deceleration from the previous month, perhaps giving the Bank of Japan a little bit more cover when it comes to their more gradual pace of tightening and hiking rates. The Bloomberg Economics expectation right now is for the first hike to resume in July in the summer this year, as we're seeing right now the Japanese yen at around the 153 level. We also have the jobless rate coming in at 2.6%, staying in line with economists' expectations for the month of December and unchanged from the previous month. The job to applicant ratio improving a little bit, 119 jobs available per 100 people, applicants to those jobs, which is a slight improvement from the previous month, which was at 1.18. Of course, we continue to watch the Shunto wage negotiations on wages to see if this inflationary trend in Japan continues. But of course, we have seen incredible upside when it comes to the stock market, especially in the tech sector. The appetite for data storage last year pushed Japanese memory chip maker Kioxia into the leagues of the world's best performing stocks. It surged, illustrating the tech industry's booming demand for memory as hyperscalers rush to build out AI infrastructure. Chips like Kioxia's are essential for AI training and data centers, And the company counts the likes of Apple and Microsoft among its clients. Joining us now is Stacey Smith, Executive Chairman at Kyoto. Really great to have you with us here in the Tokyo studio. So business has been good, as we can tell. What is driving right now your performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a fun story. Probably the largest, most successful company that most people have even heard of. We just passed 10 trillion yen valuation, over 15,000 people. Recent IPO company, but we're a very large, established company. What's driving our market right now is just overall demand for the data center and AI. And then specifically, our technology leadership, we're in a fantastic position from that standpoint. There's leadership over the rest of the industry, so we can do things that others can't.
Not to mention that, of course, you have the broader tech environment right now giving you that upside, especially the rush for memory chips.
Correct. Yeah, if you think about AI, one of the key components is that you need to have data readily accessible for the AI engines and the inference engines. And that's what we provide. We're the largest provider of that, and that has been just a wonderful market for us.
The high pricing that we're seeing right now perhaps hampering some of those companies that rely on your products. How long do you think this will last?
So, it's what's happening right now is we're seeing this uptick in demand, and we're not seeing some of our competitors investing in this particular segment of the market. Our competitors tend to be investing right now more in high bandwidth memory or DRAM, and so from the standpoint of where we stand in providing storage, we're in a really good position. And so we're growing our capacity, and we're trying to make sure we have enough supply for our customers.
When do you think the supply crunch will subside for the rest of the world?
It's hard to say. I think as we look out across the rest of this year, the market will continue to be tight. We have customers coming to us with demand forecasts that they want solved, and we've worked with these customers for a long time, so we're doing everything we can to
booked out.
Well, it doesn't really work that way in our industry, but we have the large cloud suppliers and the AI players are performing at us, and we're talking about making sure we have supply for the year.
Those big suppliers, Apple, of course, Dell, also one of your customers. What are the biggest concerns for them?
I think what drives the market is energy efficiency and performance. And so with our technology, we've announced a product that we're now in high volume manufacturing called Big Say. It provides the best combination of that. And so that energy efficiency, particularly as you're talking AI in the data center, is very important. So we can reduce the energy footprint of these data centers in terms of how the data is being stored. We can have a big impact on the market.
Your new CEO actually emphasized those 2 points when it comes to his vision, right? Give us a little bit more insight into the technological roadmap that Kyoto has at the moment.
Yeah, and let me talk for a second about the CEO transition, because I think that's really important. We announced last night that we're going through a CEO transition. Our prior CEO has done a wonderful job. He was part of our journey from becoming an independent company through our IPO a little over a year ago. And last night we handed the reins to Okta-san. He's a deep technologist, and he's been 40 years in the industry, a wonderful leader. And so his vision is to continue that drive towards technology leadership, the drive towards making sure that we have scale. We're the largest player in this market, and the drive towards working closely with our customers and building those deep customer relationships.
And you also have partnerships with the likes of SanDisk, for example.
Correct, and that was another announcement that happened earlier this morning. So we've been in a 2-decade-long joint venture with Samsung, with SanDisk.
Sounds like you're a competitor there.
And we just announced earnings. So, it is probably the most successful JV in the industry. And what we announced yesterday is a 5-year extension, and as a recognition of our manufacturing leadership, we're going to get paid in an incremental way from what we have over the last couple of decades. And so I think it's really good for them to get leadership product for 5 more years, so that'll take us to 2034. And that's great for us because we have the scale. It makes us the largest, and we're getting paid.
Talking about competitors like Samsung, but you also are competing against new Chinese entrants. How does that bode for you?
Whether it's a Chinese player or a Korean player, the game plan for us is the same. It's to have technology leadership and those deep relationships with customers.
How is your Chinese market looking? I understand it's about 20% of your revenue.
Yeah.
But what about the geopolitical tensions, the export controls? We have President Trump talking about more tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, the geopolitical environment is difficult across the board, but it's just important for a company to navigate through that and do as well as we possibly can. The Chinese market is, relatively good. It's a big market for us, but the growth right now that we're seeing is really in the data center and the AI segment.
Are you factoring in the tariff impact?
One of my team members
into our
at
business
Valuetainment
how we conduct
and Patrick
our
Bedega
plans.
Consulting. Shout out
with
to
that, we're
everyone
seeing
there,
record
including
revenue, high
Patrick
operating
Bedega
margin, and
himself,
strong growth rates.
especially.
How do you reassess supply
Shout out
chain
to Mr.
risk?
Anthony.
We look at it all the time, and with the tightness of some of the other components
I
of
have
the
an
ecosystem,
idea
that's a big part of what we look at
how
to
much
make sure
I'm going
that
to
we
invest
continue
for
to
this
grow the
year.
market.
When it comes to your heavy reliance on NAND, for
And
example, I mean,
I'm
Kyoto is
gonna
doing great right now,
reserve
but that's not
everything. I'm gonna
always
put
been the
everything
case,
on
especially with a
pause
downturn like in 2022, for example.
until
Do you worry that that could happen again, or has AI demand changed
that
the game?
portion of my tour is complete.
What NAND does is
Then
it
I'm going to
provides
take
the
a
storage of the
percentage
data.
of the proceeds
And with the
to
data growth that
hire
we're seeing,
some of
I think,
these new
and our
professionals
position
that I'm
in
going to
markets that
need
range from AI
to
to
secure
traditional servers to
venture
phones to
capital,
PCs, that the demand for
seed capital,
storage
the angel
driven by the increase
investors
of data, I think
in
will
order
continue. We're
to
seeing
have the
big
auction.
growth in the mid-teens this year and the high teens
We're
next year,
definitely
and that's
not
been pretty
going
consistent
with
for the
Christie's or
consistent,
Sotheby's.
maybe even down a little
We're
bit from
not
what we've
going
seen
to
over
give
the
up
last 10 years.
20%
So
of the
I think we'll see
collection
growth.
just
When it comes
because
to
whatever.
your finances, for example, of course, all of this boom in
It's
AI
much
demand
better
has
for
helped.
me
You
to
tapped the dollar bond market
use
for
a
the first time
different
last year.
strategy.
Do you have more plans on
Definitely
that regard,
Vayner
especially
Media,
with the volatility in the yen market, for
contingent,
example?
Yeah.
Vayner Media
So,
spearheaded
our
campaign,
journey from being
and little by little
division inside
acquiring
of Toshiba to an
a
independent
better
company
set of
to now being
professionals.
a public company.
Even my
We've been
team
revising our
overseas for
capital
like Latin
structure as we've
America,
gone to make it more
I
modern and
believe
appropriate.
that
And so,
I'm going to do the opposite
if
of
you
what
zoom
people
out on
estimate
that,
for the market.
what
I'm
we've
going to
been
hire
doing
more
is
people.
dramatically reducing our debt level.
And I want to give a shout out to everything and
increasing our
everybody that I
investments in
love,
capacity
especially.
and things like that. And we'll continue
But
to tap different markets to
these
have
negotiations
appropriate capital structure for
have
the
been
business.
very
Different markets in
challenging
different
as a
regions.
human
Different
being.
markets and different regions.
When it comes to the stock market rally, we have seen about
me being a
500+%
doctor from a
gains
doctor
for Kyoto
standpoint,
already
not
just in
speaking to you as an
2025.
engineer,
Concerns over
it's very
overvaluation.
hard
Are
to
they overdone?
administrate all of the people that I love and care for.
You look at the underlying
They
demand for us,
express
and you look
their
at some of the
creativity
valuation
different.
metrics
I'm
like
an artist, so
a
everything I
PE
do
metric or
is
something like that.
creative.
I'm not seeing a
I've
big
learned
bubble when
to
it comes to the
grow
valuation
and
of our stock
understand that
price.
most people are
I
not
think
like
what's
that.
important for us is just to continue
So
to
they may
execute,
be
to
able
grow
to be
the
like that
business,
for a day,
to
a week, a
delight our
month, but they
customers, to
can't
have
do it for
technology
10,
leadership.
15, 20, 25
Stacey Smith,
years.
really
So
good to have you with us here in the Tokyo
this
studio. He's
situation
executive chairman
is
at Kioxia, and of
complex
course, marking
because
about a year since you
how
IPO'd
you
and that
doing? Top of the
immense
morning.
rally of 500+%
The main
for last
reason
year.
why
April.
I sought out investment is only for the
Not for
auction.
car insurance
But
anyway.
once
If you haven't
investors
checked
understand
insurance policies in a
what
while,
the auction
you could be
consists
missing out on
of course,
savings.
they want
Credit
intellectual
Karma helps
property,
you find a
and that's
policy
off
that
the
works for
table.
you
This is
and your
why
wallet.
RM
Explore
Sotheby's and
options on
Christie's
Credit Karma
is
now.
off the table after 5 years of back and forth. 5 years of injustices, what they did with people, they have refused to do for me. Same thing with Wells Guinness, which were under litigation. Because of that, I'm unable to speak about it as freely as I would like, but I've broken every World Guinness record for music in the last 5 years. And in the next 5 years, I intend to do exactly the same thing. So even last year, I closed out with 1,218 songs. And I hate to have to talk about the art and the music last, because
Jeremy, we have some
business
breaking
is
news
so
crossing the
defensive.
terminal as well. Now, following on
People
from
don't understand
China
that
and
at the end
Canada
of
sort
the
of
day, as a
resetting
human
relations
being,
with
and I'm
Mark Carney
negotiating
visiting
the legacy
Beijing
of my
earlier this
entire
year.
life.
We have been
So
sort of
every
watching out
single
for the
decision that I
reaction from the
make,
US president,
this is the
since
pressure
hearing that in
that I
terms
have
of
inside.
the US and how they will
sometimes
decertify all
you can
aircraft
find
made
yourself in
in
a situation
Canada.
where people
And Trump
just
here
don't
is citing
understand.
how
And
Canada
again, this is
prohibits
all new
or has been
technology. It's
prohibiting
never
the
been
sale
done
of
before.
Gulfstream
this
products
is
is,
all
of
new.
course, the business
Everything is
jet
new. I don't
maker out
expect
of the US.
anybody to
He
understand.
also says they'll charge Canada 50%
for the
tariffs
investors,
on all aircraft
I have a lot of
imported
wild
to
cards,
the US, and I
but
imagine this could
finding
affect
myself in the
Canadian
same
business
position. Right?
jet makers such
I have
as
about 10 to 15
Bombardier. And
billion
also
friends
on the tariff front,
for,
we
for
are
many,
hearing
years.
from
Few decades.
Yonhap reporting that the South
I've
Korean
never
industry
made
minister
that phone
Kim
call. I've
Jong-hwan
never
has said that they
took
will
anything
hold
outside of
another
friendship,
round
right?
of talks
I always told
with
myself, I
their
knew
U.S.
that I could make one phone
counterparts,
call,
and
right?
he was referring here to the U.S.
But I
Foreign Secretary
always
Howard
held myself
Lutnick, and
up
of
to the
course Kim
standard.
had
If I was ever
arrived
to
in
make that
Washington
phone call,
just a
it was
day
going to be a
ago
home
to
run, grand
clarify
slam.
South Korea's
Like, I would
position
never
on the so-called delayed South
destroy the
Korea-U.S.
friendship and the
trade
bonds
deals.
of
Among the
brotherhood that I
developments
have with
we
these
are
peers.
watching on the U.S. front as well.
Just to
More ahead on the
put
Asia
something on
trade.
the table that's a
This
hit
is
or miss.
Bloomberg.
So this is extremely hard. I just saw a clip of Michael Jordan walking through the Nike factory when they went into production for the Michael Jordan shoes, right? And when they were reaching the
Bloomberg has
agreement,
learned that
they had
U.S.
to
law
fly in his
enforcement has
parents,
been
he was still
investigating
fairly young.
allegations by former Meta
And it
Platforms
just goes to show
contractors
you,
that Meta
me
personnel
looking
can
back to the
access
history and time as
WhatsApp
an
messages.
entrepreneur, I
Meta
wish that I
markets
had
the app
that
as
team
having
around me
end-to-end encryption,
to go
and the
speak to
company's
these people.
spokesperson says the contractor's
So
claims are
the
impossible.
actual
Let's bring in
consulting
Bloomberg's Sarah
firm
Fryer, who leads our
has
big tech
no other
coverage
option. I have
on
to
this.
delegate
Sarah,
powers
this
to
is
them
certainly raising some
and
eyebrows.
trust
What do we
them
know about the
to help me
claims
through
about the
this process.
investigations?
And even that is
Bloomberg
a
has seen
challenge.
documents
Even
that
has
that
been a challenge.
show that there was an
every day
investigation
I try
at
to make
the
as
Bureau of
much
Industry
forward
Security, which
progress
is
as I
part of
possibly
Congress,
can.
looking into
Mr. Anthony reached out to me about
whether
2
and
days ago.
how
I reached out
employees were able to view
to the
or have
firm
the
a few
quote-unquote
days ago.
unfettered access
They were
to
super
WhatsApp
professional.
messages, which are
I was
supposed to be
expecting a
end-to-end
return
encrypted. The documents
in
did
about
not
72
detail
hours. They hit
the
me back
technical
within
possibilities
a
for
few
how this
hours,
could
maybe the
happen.
next day.
Did not indicate what
Which
entity was under
it puts a lot
investigation.
into perspective.
But we
So
do know that they
I also
interviewed
believe
these former
in respecting
contractors and were
the
looking into this
boundary and the
possibility,
respect
which
line, right? For
directly
example, my
contradicts
management team,
how Meta has
the
marketed
person
WhatsApp,
that's
and indeed how
spearheading that
users have
movement,
come to
they've
expect
actually
their
lowered
messages
their
to be handled
consultation
on the app.
prices. And
Sarah, this is not the first
I
time that
still
Meta
have
has
ways
faced
to
user
commune
privacy
and
concerns. So
congregate
how
and
significant
communicate
is
with these
this?
people. But
Well,
I
I
still
think
respect the fact that they have a
we don't
professional
know
avenue.
what the
So,
investigators
because
concluded
everybody
from
has
their
done that
inquiry
to protect
into
what they have
these
going on, I've done the same.
into these
So with
findings,
music,
but I
you
think
have
that
to connect with me on the neck.
this
It's the
is
only way.
something that
And
investigators are looking into.
even
This
that
comes on the
is
heels of
something that
a
I'm
whistleblower
building
lawsuit that was
and I'm working on.
recently whistleblower
So,
complaint. I'm sorry, and a
respectfully,
lawsuit that
this
was filed
is
recently.
my
So it's
update
WhatsApp, which
status
is really
as
the
of today.
property
Tomorrow
that
things may
Meta has
change. I
pointed
may
to
make
as
a
the most
completely
secure, the
different
most
decision.
private,
But
the
I feel
most
good that these
to
people that I
have
care about
conversations that
know
nobody, not even
what
the company, can
direction
see.
I'm heading
The fact that all of this is happening at the
and
same
all I
time
can do is the absolute best that I
you know,
can every
a
single
big
day. That's all that I can do.
raises a
Keep
lot of questions.
negotiating. You know, Warner Brothers,
What do we
they're
know about
talking
the
about
timeline of
this,
these
that, and the third.
investigations? I mean, the
They're trying
report
to close
was
the deal
dated
before June,
back
but
to
then there's
July
meetings
last year.
in April.
Yes, we know that
Every
as of
investment firm
January,
is saying,
according
no,
to
2
our
or 3
sources,
months, we're
the
going to do this rollout,
investigation
2 or
was
3 months.
still
It's going to take me at
underway.
least
We do
4
not
months
know
to get
whether the
everything that I
investigation
need
was
situated with the
concluded
lawyers.
or
And once I do
what
that,
was
everything
found.
is a go. And shout out to my legal team.
Congress Sarah Fryer, who leads our big tech coverage there. Thanks for that insight.
Every time
And
there's a
here are the
market
latest from
change
the
or
corporate
shift,
front.
we
NVIDIA
must have
CEO Jensen
a
Huang
sense of
says they have
consistency
yet to receive
and
orders from
continue
Chinese
what we're
customers
doing.
for
There's
their
a lot of
H200 AI chips.
litigation that
Huang met
my
customers and
lawyer
government
and
officials
the
over the
team
past
are
few
handling.
days during a trip to
So I
China.
don't want to be a
Beijing, for its
distraction.
part,
At the
recently
same time,
told the
I can
country's
still
largest
provide
tech
value
firms
and
that they can
support
prepare orders
to
for
all
the
of my
chips,
business partners.
suggesting it's
You know,
close to
sometimes
formally
I feel
approving
that I'm I'm being
reports.
pulled in so many different
I'm hoping
directions,
that also
and all I can
the
do is
Chinese
stay
government
through.
would allow
This is for all
NVIDIA
the
to sell in
cheeseburgers.
H200, so
This
they
is
have
for
to
everything.
decide.
So
And I'm looking forward
I'm gonna
to
take my
a
time.
favorable decision.
I'm not
I think that
overestimating what I can
H200
do in a
is
short time
very good
span
for American technology leadership.
because
It's also
I
very
fully
good for
understand,
Chinese
and it's
market.
not an
And the customers
overestimation
would
of
very
what
much
I
like to
can
have
do in
H200.
just a little bit more
And so
time.
I'm looking forward to a good
So
decision.
even retraining some of my
Blackstone
team
is
and
set to
some
be
of
in
my
advanced
staff
talks to become the
to
single
understand the
largest
technology
shareholder of the
so that
embattled
they
Hong
can
Kong
help. Because
developer New
sometimes
World.
people
Bloomberg
want
sources
to
say
help,
the
but
proposed
they
deal
don't
would
know how to
allow
help.
Blackstone to
And
restructure
because
the debt
technology
laden
is so
company,
competitive, they
while
can
New World
actually
could
get in
continue
the way
trying to
of
offload
things
assets.
happening.
New World was
And
pushed to the
that is
brink of
very,
default
very
last year
frustrating.
after
Like today, I have
debt-fueled
to make
expansion
some small
collided with
adjustments,
a deep property
and
slump. We have more ahead on the Asia trade.
I feel
This
that
is Bloomberg.
I need to pray because I don't know exactly how things will turn out, but I'm praying that whatever is God's will is what happens. I pray that there's no deterrent, there's no noise or distraction, etc., etc. So this is pretty much the hardest part about this entire thing because everybody has their own hidden agenda. And again, not speaking from an engineering standpoint, speaking from a doctor standpoint. As a doctor, I know that I have more patience than I can handle.
We're watching for more data out of Japan, including retail sales and industrial production. But for now, we are showing you what the setup is for the market opens as we're just digesting Tokyo CPI numbers as well. CPI has cooled more than expected. We're talking about the excluding fresh food, core CPI number at a growth of 2%, which is a deceleration from the previous month, and is also coming in below economists' expectations. The headline at 1.5% growth for Tokyo CPI. We also had the jobless rate just minutes ago, and this coming in at 2.6%. The job to applicant ratio 1.19. Industrial production at the moment dropping in Japan. It's a contraction of 0.1%, which is a smaller contraction for the month of December than economists had expected. Also, the contraction has subsided a little bit from the previous month when it contracted almost 3%. Year on year, it's actually growth of 2.6%, which is also surprising to the upside. Retail sales month on month, though, a contraction of 2%. Year on year, still contraction of 0.9%. Both month on month and year on year numbers for retail sales are missing to the downside. So you can see a little bit of a contrast there in factory numbers and what consumers are doing. Of course, not surprising perhaps given the incredible strength that we've seen in semiconductor exports, car exports as well, but consumption perhaps being a little bit hit because of inflation continuing to remain elevated here in Japan. Let's take a look at the Japanese markets and what we can expect at the open. Bloomberg Japan equities reporter Alice French joins us now. Alice, so the initial enthusiasm around Japanese stocks seems to have worn off a little bit in the past week. What are you watching for in this last trading day?
I still make the best decisions.
Yeah, morning. I mean, like you say, we started the year really with a bang this January, and there was a lot of excitement around the Tokyo trade, but we've kind of seen things cooling, especially this week. I think there's a little bit of jitters re-emerging around tech, right? There's maybe a little bit of fatigue, a lot of those kind of semiconductor AI names still looking pretty expensive, and obviously we've had numbers out of the US and Microsoft around this huge spending on AI, and I think investors are getting a little bit worried about that CapEx spending and investment, and that's really showing in the Tokyo market. You mentioned there the kind of the inflation and the consumption numbers this morning. I think that feeds into this kind of cautious path that the BOJ has been taking, which is perhaps good news for equity investors. It means that we're not facing another rate hike immediately. But of course, in the background, we have all of this sort of election noise and the chaos that we saw in the bond market last week that has calmed down a bit this week. But I think those kind of fiscal worries, they are spilling over into kind of equity sentiment, and people overall just feeling a little bit uncertain. It's still unclear whether Takeshi will sort of emerge with a majority, and that seems to be kind of just kind of hitting that risk appetite a little bit, I think.
So what are you expecting when trading begins shortly?
Yeah, so look, earnings are going to be in focus. We know that Fujitsu had a pretty good reading